At this point, the VW Golf 8.5 GTI is a very familiar car on the channel. We saw it first time at the 2025 SA Festival of Motoring, then did a first drive and impressions in December of the same year thanks to VW Lani Motors in Tzaneen. We've also covered it a lot in our videos where we discuss market trends and analysis. So now, Volkswagen South Africa has sent me the car to live with for a couple of days, and I'm going to relay to you what my experience with the car was like. In the end, we'll see if my opinion about the Golf 8.5 GTI has changed or remains the same. Please do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. Help me get to 50,000 subscribers. We're really close now, and thank you so much for your continued support. Let's start with what it's actually like to live with the Golf 8.5 GTI every day. The first thing that stood out for me is just how livable this car is. The suspension is really nice and compliant. It doesn't feel overly firm like something like the Hyundai i30N, for example. It's comfortable enough that you could genuinely use this as your daily driver without feeling beaten up every time you get out of the car. The steering is another thing I noticed almost immediately. It's very light, actually lighter than the Golf 8R, the GTI TCR, and even the GTI Club Sport. But to be fair, that does make sense because this is the regular GTI model. It's designed to be easier to drive every day, and in that regard, Volkswagen absolutely nailed it. Now, there's one thing that became quite annoying after spending a few days with the car, and that's the tire roar. Whenever you're driving on rough asphalt, there is simply too much road noise coming into the cabin. At first, I couldn't understand why. Then I had a closer look at the tires and wheels, and it all started to make sense. The Golf 8.5 GTI now comes with 235mm wide tires, whereas the Golf 8 GTI, Golf 7 GTI, and Golf 7.5 GTI all ran on 225mm tires. On top of that, in South Africa, the car comes standard with these 19-inch wheels. Combine those two things, wider tires and bigger wheels, and the result is noticeably more tire noise on rough roads. Secondly, when you hit serious potholes or larger bumps, the ride can be quite harsh. You definitely feel those impacts. So my conclusion on the ride quality is actually a bit of a mixed bag. The suspension itself is comfortable and compliant, but the tire noise and harshness over rough roads do take away from the refinement. Now let's move over to the equipment, because I actually think we need to debunk one of the biggest talking points surrounding the Golf 8.5 GTI, well, at least in our market. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, you'll know we've spoken many times about how the Golf 8.5 GTI is now sold as a pre-spec vehicle. One of the biggest reasons people have used to justify buying a low-mileage Golf 8 GTI instead is that it supposedly comes with a lot more equipment. Well, after living with the 8.5, I can confidently say that simply isn't the case. In fact, the only two features I genuinely found missing are the heads-up display and the Harman Kardon sound system. Everything else is already included as standard. Adaptive cruise control, driver assist systems such as blind spot monitoring and lane keep assist, reversing camera, built-in navigation, a heated steering wheel, heated and ventilated seats, a power adjustable driver seat, dynamic chassis control, panoramic sunroof, the list goes on. While the older Golf 8 could be freely optioned, I actually think many people underestimate just how much equipment comes standard on the Golf 8.5 GTI. While we're talking about equipment, one of my biggest criticisms of the South African Golf 8.5 GTI has always been the fact that we don't get the Harman Kardon sound system. So naturally, I spent quite a bit of time listening to the standard system, and honestly, I was pleasantly surprised. Once I adjusted the settings properly, it actually sounded really good. I'll throw my settings up on the screen because they made a massive difference. Since I'm usually driving alone, I moved the fade towards the front speakers, and immediately the whole sound system sounded louder and more focused. Another tip, if you've driven an 8.5 GTI and thought the Bluetooth audio sounded quiet, go into the sound menu, then volume, scroll right to the bottom and change BT audio to loud. That alone makes quite a noticeable difference. Overall, I was genuinely impressed. The bass is rich, the clarity is excellent, and by the end of the week, I honestly never found myself wishing the Harman Kardon sound system was there. And this comes from someone who loves listening to music inside a car. Now, fuel consumption consumption. Volkswagen South Africa handed me the car with a full tank of fuel. The highest driving range I personally saw was around 520 kilometers. Now remember, that figure depends entirely on how the previous person drove the car. I actually met up with Mr. How Much while I had the GTI, and his full tank was showing around 620 kilometers of range. Volkswagen officially claims a maximum range of around 705 kilometers. Personally, I think that's achievable, but only on a long journey where you're cruising at roughly 100 kilometers an hour. During my week with the car, I averaged between 9 and 10 liters per 100 kilometers. The lowest figure I managed was 7.4 liters per 100 kilometers while cruising on the highway at around 80 to 90 kilometers an hour for roughly 10 kilometers. Volkswagen claims 7.1 liters per 100 kilometers. I actually believe that figure is realistic. If you really made fuel economy your priority, I wouldn't be surprised if you even managed to dip into the sixes. Over the 5 days, I covered almost 930 kilometers. I spent around 1,550 rands on fuel. A full tank of fuel on one of these with current prices is around 1,300 rands. So I only spent about 250 rands more than the value of a full tank. Considering the amount of spirited driving I did every chance I got, I actually think that's pretty fair. Speaking of spirited driving, let's talk about performance. As most of you already know, the Golf 8.5 GTI now produces 195 kilowatts of power, which is 15 kilowatts more than the previous Golf 8 GTI. Torque remains at 380 Newton meters, and I have to say, this car is seriously fast, like really fast. The power delivery is addictive. Every opportunity I got, I just planted my foot, and the way this thing builds speed is incredible. Once you're already moving, it honestly starts feeling surprisingly close to Golf R territory. That extra power really makes a difference. Now, unfortunately, this is also where my biggest disappointment comes in. The Golf 8.5 GTI has lost a lot of its soul. Because of the redesigned integrated particle filter that's been introduced to comply with stricter emissions regulations, the exhaust note has become much quieter than before. The famous DSG upshift farts, they're still technically there, but they're so muted that you barely notice them. Unless the car is fully warmed up and you are really revving it out, you hardly hear anything from inside the cabin. Here's a clip with a microphone mounted next to the exhaust. It definitely sounds good from this clip, but remember, the microphone is sitting right next to the exhaust, and I never got a chance to listen to the car from the outside, so I don't really know if the cabin is too insulated or the exhaust is just too muted from inside the cabin. Compared to the Golf 8 GTI, it's definitely quieter, because with that car, you can hear so much of the exhaust from inside, and for me, that's probably my biggest frustration with the entire car. Older GTIs were enjoyable even when you weren't driving quickly, because the soundtrack added so much emotion. With the Golf 8.5 GTI, you almost have to drive fast to really enjoy it. Most of the time, I actually left the car in comfort mode. It's still very responsive in comfort. Even though sport mode gives you some pops on the overrun and sharpens the response, I rarely felt the need to use it because the sound simply isn't exciting enough anymore. Now, with that being said, the chassis is absolutely phenomenal. The car feels incredibly light on its feet. The balance is exceptional. The handling honestly blew me away. For a regular GTI, it's outstanding. I'd comfortably give it a 9 out of 10 for handling. The steering itself is very light and doesn't give you a huge amount of feedback. Likewise, you don't feel a massive amount through the front wheels, but the traction control system is unbelievably good. You can carry so much confidence through corners, whether it's a tight mountain pass, or even a track day, this car genuinely encourages you to push harder. To get a full scope of the driving experience, be on the lookout for a POV driving video I'll post a day or so after this video. I've also linked it down in the description once it's up on the channel. Lastly, let's talk about the styling. I think we can all agree the Golf 8.5 GTI is a really good looking car. Everywhere I went, it attracted attention. People constantly looked at it. The Matrix LED headlights with the illuminated Volkswagen badge look fantastic. The redesigned taillights are probably my favorite change. Inside, the ambient lighting gives the cabin a really premium feel. It's modern, it's stylish, and I genuinely believe a lot of the lighting features on the car are going to inspire other manufacturers over the next few years. So, after living with the Golf 8.5 GTI for 5 days, has my opinion changed? Yes, but not in the way you might expect. I've always maintained that the Golf 8.5 GTI is not worth paying the full retail price of around 908,000 rands. And after spending nearly 930 kilometers with the car, I still believe that. Not because the car isn't good, quite the opposite. The problem has never been the product. The problem has always been the price. There are plenty of examples selling well below retail. If you buy one brand new at full price, I genuinely think you'll expose yourself to unnecessary depreciation should you decide to sell it shortly afterwards. So here's my advice. Find a low mileage demo, something in the region of 790,000 rands to 800,000 rands. We've already seen examples like this one at VW Northcliffe with around 4,000 kilometers on the clock, advertised for 789,000 rands. At that kind of money, my opinion changes completely, because at that price, I genuinely think the Golf 8.5 GTI is worth buying. You get almost every feature you could possibly want. It's comfortable enough to drive every day, it's practical, it's seriously quick, it handles brilliantly. Yes, it's missing some of the character and emotion that made older GTIs so memorable, but if you're looking for a car that's beautiful to look at, packed with technology, genuinely fast, sporty when you want it to be, and still comfortable enough to live with every single day, then I think the Golf 8.5 GTI deserves a place on your shortlist. Just make sure you buy it at the right price. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, that's cheers from me.